The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome to Gate City Chronicles. I'm Kevin Avard, your host. And today I have a very special guest from a local town, neighboring town from Hollis, Al Fulchino.
Thank you for having me, Kevin.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
And today's topic is Al Fulchino's vineyard.
Right. We have a vineyard in Hollis.
And I was just showing a picture of somebody, but it was the absolute expression of the American dream. And when I look at your vineyard, it's really a classical part of the American dream, what's going on here, right next door to Nashua, in Hollis.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
It really is more of an expression, in part, the American dream, but also the immigrant dream, at least as my family understood it. Come to America, become an American. And we had other businesses, my wife Susan and I, selling somebody else's product, whether it was petroleum products, whatever. And we wanted to, before it got too late, do a head-to-toe business, something part of our family history, and do it before it was too late. In fact, I had a gentleman at our house today, a good friend of ours. He's 75 years old, and his wife's telling me he's spending his time on the internet looking for farms. And he says repeatedly over and over again, it's too late for me. Oh. And, you know, in his heart, he's a farmer. He's a good old-fashioned Italian gentleman, hard worker, loves to touch the ground and bring it and give it and share it, and that's kind of what we do in our own way. We just wanted to do it before it was too late. And it's a great place to bring the grandkids to, the family, and they can see that we planted the first vine, and in some pictures you'll have down the road, you'll see some of the building. We essentially built it ourselves.
Yeah,
you know?
well, I have a whole bunch of pictures before me, and this first picture is of a little girl.
Yeah, she's one of our 4 beautiful grandchildren. We have 3 granddaughters and a grandson. I was hunting and searching for pictures, and that one just popped at me, so that's the one we'll go with. But they all are equally loved, I should say. So if only one picture gets shown, there's nothing personal. But yeah, they have a great time. They help Poppy and Nani pick grapes. They help us press. They help us bottle. And they see and touch what's real. And they see the customers come in, and they sometimes hand them a wine glass or, you know, whatever, or give them a chair. I think it's a great education.
Sure it is, yeah. They're learning how to interact with people instead of the...
exactly.
And the second picture here is a picture of the vineyard.
Yeah, that's a picture midsummer, I think just after I've hedged the vines. One of the beautiful things about a vineyard that everybody gravitates to is the order of a vineyard. Straight rows, symmetry. People appreciate that, and they appreciate, you know, it's something I think that's inherent in everybody, all 6 billion of us. There's something about something that comes from the earth, right, that you can touch with your hands, turn it into vino cotto, turn it into raisins, jam, jellies, juice, wine. It's the perfect food, I think.
Well, one of the things that you were telling me was that, yeah, this is New Hampshire. You can't have a vineyard here. Somebody came to you and said, you can't do it.
This is one of the highlights, one of the great things I enjoy. If you think back through history, you know, don't take this bad, you're French. The Italians,
I got some Irish in me too.
Well, the Italians helped you folks when they started conquering the world and brought their grapes there. Anyways, fast forward 2,000 years or so, and the French thought that the Californians made Hawaiian punch, not wine. And fast forward a little more, 1976, 200-year anniversary for the country. A fellow in the movie's Bottle Shock, if anybody wants to go see it. It's a pretty good movie. A fellow had a wine store in France, decided to invite California winemakers to France, have a competition. White wine from America and a red wine, both won. But anyways, and then fast forward a little more, Oregon, Washington State, New York, Virginia, wherever, the Californians snicker.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't, because the shoe was on the other foot not too long ago.
Right.
And really what people don't recognize is you can go to Europe, for example, and you will find excellent vineyards well into Zone 3. And of course we're Zone 5, sometimes /4, but pretty much. So we can bring some European varieties over here. We have some Italian, some French, and some French-American hybrids. We do everything on site, so it's everything head to toe: plant, pick, prune, bottle, label, cork, crush to stem, blend, oak, age, blah blah blah. It's the McDonald's commercial.
Sure.
And we built the buildings ourselves, but it can be done here. And some of our favorite things, though, to this day, are the people coming in who are very boisterous when they walk through the door, and say you just can't do it.
Right.
And
well, we got a picture right here of a location.
yeah, this is our vineyard down at the bottom of the little Pine Hill Valley in Hollis. We're probably about 230 feet above sea level. It's old ancient riverbed. We have probably 3 feet of organic material there. Heats up immensely in the summertime. We actually have had about 2 inches above the soil, 130-degree temperature on one particular day. Not that you want that consistently, but you get a 90-degree day, 100-degree day. The vineyard, our vineyard anyways, is oftentimes 10 to 25 degrees warmer than what the advertised temperature is. In fact, even Boyer Field on a routine day will be 5 or 6 degrees warmer at about 6 foot high off the ground.
And that's ideal for
the typical grape growing regions of the world, the Californians, et cetera, they have a growing season that is just as wide as can be. And that's the reason grapes have history through those areas that we all know about, because that's where the grape wanted to grow. And we sometimes, the colder climates, we're forcing it into a slightly tighter growing season. But grapes, like tomatoes and so many other crops, have what's called growing degree days requirement. When you hit that number, you're going to ripen your tomato, your onion, your whatever it is. And the same thing is true of grapes. In our area, to ripen a grape, we need around 1,900 growing degree days. With the heat that we have, we often hit 2,100 to 2,400 growing degree days. So what's really nice about it is our acidity naturally drops. We don't use any chemicals to bring the acidity down. We do not need to use cold stabilization, and there's nothing wrong with those. I mean, they're things that people around the world use.
This is all natural, eh?
I'll say this: if we have a fairly rainy and cloudy year, then we will go down a notch. Mm-hmm. But this is one of the sunnier areas in the country, and we really can ripen the grapes. So we get Brix levels. I mean, we're not getting 30 and 32 like you can get in some parts of California, but we will hit 26, 27, 28.
How large is the vineyard?
The whole property is 5.5 acres. The vineyard itself, we have planted 3 acres. So we do about, we have, I think, about 1,400 vines altogether. And we are doing typically 22,000 to 26,000 pounds of grapes on the property.
Is that snow on the ground?
That is snow on the ground. That's last year. Actually, that day was funny because it was snowing about an hour before that. And then the sun came out. You can see we kind of don't have, I don't think in that picture we don't have as many, all the clothing we had. But that's pruning. A bunch of friends, family come out, help us prune. We drop the cuttings on that tarp, and we sled it down and get rid of it. Do you have local schools come in and look at your vineyard at all and say, hey, this is how you do it? Yeah, we haven't yet had the schools. I know they're going to come out. We've had a couple, people bring up the subject of bringing children through, but we wanted to get done with our larger building. Sure. Really, we couldn't accommodate that before this past year. Yeah. So, Yeah.
How many years has it been in?
We planted in 2007.
Yeah.
We're going into our 9th growing season right now.
Now you told me this off camera, but
Yeah.
the picture.
Yeah, this picture right here is a picture in the spring, and in fact, you can see the cut marks on the wood,
Yeah.
and that is what we were just pruning in the other picture you just showed. So this would be somewhere in between the last week in April to maybe May 10th or so, when we have bud break. This might actually be a week after.
That's a beautiful site right there.
That's a beautiful site. That's what we're looking for. That means the vine made it through the winter. There's no dieback. The pruning techniques are a little bit different than normal ornamental pruning, but what you have there is your bud. Mm-hmm. And it looks like leaves, but inside the leaves actually is the fruit cluster. And that right there is your vintage in a small little capsule.
Yeah.
It comes out at maybe 3/4 of an inch long, and eventually it might end up being anywhere from, say, an 8-inch cluster to 12 or 14 inches.
Do you have any problem with birds or insects or anything? Do they attack the grapes at all? Or?
I'll tell you the truth. When I planted the vineyard, and the next picture I know shows this picture right here. That was in 2007.
Number 6, yeah.
The insect problem we have is actually bees. And while we don't need bees to pollinate, we don't want them around at harvest time. The fruit pollinates itself with just little shaking by the wind, so it's all self-pollinated. The end of the year, we have a problem with bees in that there's not much around, and we're ripening, in late August and all through September. And if the bees find, especially a couple of our French varieties, they're very thin-skinned, they will go take a little drink. They won't even suck out all the juice out of the berry.
Just enough to spoil it.
Just enough, then they go to the other one. And so it's something we have to watch. Sometimes when we're harvesting, we'll grab a cluster and there's a bee on the other side, and a few people get stung by a bee. Yeah. But we had bird netting, and we've never, I don't want to use it. Unfortunately, we haven't, we just consider that the birds are going to eat a little bit.
Sure.
We have the last couple of years, we have a bear coming through and eats a little bit. And,
sure.
And we have a couple of deer, but that's really about it. It hasn't been too bad.
Nothing major, no major crop damage.
We've been pretty lucky.
What do you fertilize with, or do you?
Well, we're starting out with the land, the French word, of course, is terroir, which involves the soil components, the climate, the growing season, many factors. We have a very fertile site right now. And one of the things, I had a restaurateur come to me, and we were talking about our 603, which is a wine that we produce from the property, but we wanted to give it a New Hampshire name. Mm-hmm. He was saying, I didn't think you could grow that there, and this land is so rich. I thought the vines had to starve. And the real truth of the matter is, you can go to France, you can go to California, and you will see vineyards in rich, fertile, former, not wetlands, but riverbeds. They're no longer riverbed, very fertile and rich. And but we always hear the stories about the vineyards and the soil, how they have to struggle. And what I always say to them is this: throughout history, vineyards were often planted in the poorer areas simply because the better areas were saved for the oxen to pull the plow through, because a farmer is not going to plow the hillside was loaded with rocks to plant their corn and their tomatoes. Sure. So the vines would go there just like the apple trees and everything. You put them, and yes, they do take wonderful qualities from limestone or volcanic rock, whatever. And that will make the wines different. But if you travel around, you also will see vines, plenty of vineyards, I should say, in fertile areas. So we start out with that, and we have a heat sink here. The heat is incredible, and that helps really ripen our grapes.
That's picture number 7, right?
Yeah, that was just the hedging picture, but the vineyard itself, yeah. Mm-hmm. So
interesting. Yeah. Now, this is a beautiful picture, number 8, which is that's just a beautiful cluster.
This is actually what's called veraison, and veraison is the process when the red grapes go from being green to turning their color red. And of course, the white grapes would be green, a very like a BB shape originally, and then they get bigger, of course. And then they turn their sort of golden or straw color, whatever the variety is going to be. So that happens typically starting around late July and then into August.
Can you get 2 different types of wines out of this? I mean, that might be a dumb question.
No, it isn't a dumb question. People, like, we make 28 wines. And they,
out of the same type of cluster?
No, we make 28 in general.
Right.
But having said that, like our signature blends are, we make 5 wines out of the same 3 grapes. We just alter the, you know, a few little things, mostly oaking and whatever. But no, you can give a winemaker one grape.
But the oaking, you know, you see even on comedy skits, it's got a little bit of oak in it.
Yeah, well,
really.
yeah.
When you say oaking, what is oaking?
Yeah. Well, oaking is something. The wines are aged in oak barrels, or they're using oak products to deliver mouthfeel and spices to the wine. The interesting about that is, centuries ago, before the Europeans especially moved up through the wooded areas, the wines were unoaked for, you know, millennia. They were stored in animal skins and pottery, you know, things like that. When they find these old pottery of you know, from a vineyard of 3,000 years ago, there was no oak to it.
Yeah.
And so as they went up, you know, all these people named Cooper, they were all barrel makers. They, of course, started storing wine in the barrels, and then, oh my goodness, look what it did to the wine. Of course, it can ruin the wine too, but that's part of the art, you know. When is too much? When is not enough? What wood should we use? Some people, aside from the oak, you know, American and French and Hungarian, they use other woods as well, cherry and Acadian.
Cherry,
so, yeah, there's different ones.
So what are these hedges right here in front of you?
Actually, they're just grass. That's all. I caught a guy. I was leaving the vineyard one day, and I saw this guy down in my vineyard, and it's like, "What are you doing there?" And he said, "Well, I'm practicing my photography." So I said, "Well, the rule of thumb is that you have to send me the photos that you take." And this was by a friend of mine. Now I didn't know him before, Michael Bartoshevitz.
Yeah.
And that's one of his photographs. Yeah. So.
And I assume picture number 10 here.
Yeah.
That's getting ready to get stomped on.
Actually, that's crushing time.
So do you do it with the feet? Do you?
No, we have a lot of people who want to do that, and we will run it by some insurance company, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
So this right here probably is in September. We'll be harvesting, and that's going through the crusher and stemmer to separate the berries from the stems. And
And picture number 8.
Yeah, that 11. One right there. So that will be a short time down the road. We do fermentations using the native New Hampshire yeast. So we don't actually throw a chemical called potassium metabisulfite at our grapes. And I'm not complaining about that or criticizing it or tearing that down. That's a procedure many wineries do. But we take we harvest our grapes. They go into the crusher destemmer. Everybody with me that day has gone to eat the grape off the vine, as many as they want. And they'll only eat so much because the acidity the next day makes their tongue raw. So if they come back the next day, they won't eat any grapes. Anyways, then they get to taste the grape juice, which is fabulous. I mean, it's so rich. It's not unlike anything you buy in the store. And from that point there, even on that day, we have people around town. We have a lady from Montepulciano. She will take what we just crushed and pressed, and she'll cook it down in McVino cut dough. And she'll get pizza dough and press her fingers in it and dimple it and throw the berries in it. And there's so many different foods that come out of off of that. You just think grapes and eat the grapes and then juice or wine, but there's so many.
Sure.
Anyway, so the yeast that's in the air, it's in the air now around us. It's ready to make wine. It's ready to take the sugar, eat the alcohol. Turn it into alcohol. And at that point, you have what's called wine, at least chemically speaking. It's not something you would buy or sell. It's just, it's not aged, and it's the acidity shows more, and there's a lot of factors that go on. And then if we left it out long enough, put it on your porch, put a cheesecloth over it, there's a bacterium in the air that will turn it into vinegar. So, you know,
right.
if you want to wash your windows or you vinegar in your salad, you know, cook with it. So, anyways, that's...
And is this where you store the wine?
Yeah, well, a little bit of yes. The little building that you have right there actually was our first winery building. And in that building, we age the wine, we process it, we bottle it. It doesn't look big, but from a previous business, we learned, especially with the taxes we pay, smaller is better. Right. Yes, you trip over your feet now and then, but you know, it serves a purpose. We do have to double the size of it. There's just no getting around it. We built both of those buildings ourselves. The bigger building now is the wine tasting room.
It's very pretty inside, by the way. Very pretty. How many gallons do you produce?
We'll do several thousand gallons right from the property. Wow. And I should say this too, because a lot of people, you know, will wonder. We have some family tradition wines on certain grapes, like my Zinfandel, that I can't grow on the property. It's just, you know, it needs to be a much warmer climate, but it's part of our history. Mm-hmm. So in that case there, we will bring those grapes in, but treat them the same as we treat ours. I'd say our wines are evenly distributed. We're almost a third of bone dry wines, and then slightly sweet, and then a little towards dessert too. But so we do a little mix of old and new, and it's a fascinating thing to see. We've got some very fruity wines, red wines no less, that we grow on the property that people, especially white wine drinkers, and they're really
My
crazy
wife
about
loves
them.
the Marabella. It's Marabella.
Marabella, yep. That's named after a village in Italy where my grandmother's from. It's one of the old hill towns. It means to see a beautiful sight or a beautiful view. And that one right there is our second bestseller bottle for bottle.
Yeah, and
so.
your signature wine, 603?
No, that's not one. 603 is actually there's a funny story on that. We changed the name on it. I can't claim to be the originator of using 603, but everybody around seems to be using 603 and whatever. And it's like, you know what? We're a New Hampshire winery. That's 100% grown on the property, processed on the property, bottled on the property.
I was going to ask you about the bottling.
It's a Burgundian style wine,
Yeah.
and so we slapped the 603 area code on there, and it's one of our top wines. And it had a history where actually we thought we were going to pull the vines out because early on we were selling all the wine we made, and that one wine was the one that I thought was just wasn't. It was okay, and people bought it, and I'd sell out of it, but we weren't real keen on it.
Right.
We built the big building, so we kind of let that go for 2 years without bottling any or selling any. And my wife was like, "Why don't you rip the vines out?" Which makes sense because why take care of them? And I held on because I thought, well, you know what? If they make that bad a wine, if people want to sneak around and see what I'm growing there, they can. Because it's on the edge of the. Well, I shouldn't even say all this. But you know what? Actually, the other big thing was they're the prettiest vine.
Yeah.
They grow straight up. They grow straight out. They grow straight up, and the grapes hang. So every time I wanted to take a picture of my vines, I went down to that part of the vineyard. And,
Yeah.
Anyway, so we let it age 2 years. We were selling a lot of wine this year, and so I took the wine thief, went into the barrel, tasted it, ran out, showed my wife. It's like, look at this. This can't be the same wine. And what it needed was 1 more year.
Needed time.
That's all it needed, yeah.
Needed time.
Yeah.
So you bottle it there too?
Yeah. We don't make the cork. We don't make the glass. My wife designs the labels, and we send it out to a printer. And I'd be hard-pressed to think that there's anything else in the whole wine process that we don't do. I mean, we have our own label machine. We have our own bottle filler. I have a filter, but I've never been a fan of it. And we decided that we were just going to go unfiltered. So all of our wines are unfiltered. And I should say this too. We have 2 fruit wines. I don't grow the fruit. Strawberries and peaches I get from Lavoie's in Hollis, they're terrific people.
Now, one thing about the Marabella, you can open it up.
Yeah.
You can have a little glass.
Yeah.
Cork it back up.
Yep.
Come back, what, 6 weeks? Longer?
Yeah.
And it'll taste the same.
We discovered that. No, I think it tastes better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're mistaken.
Well, see, I don't
kidding
drink.
around with you.
So my wife drinks.
Yeah,
but-
no, it's we discovered it by accident. Really, we'd been letting the wines. We have a lot of blends, and a lot of wines get on the dining room table, and you might be, well, I want this tonight, and another one gets pushed back, and then so you come back to it and say, my goodness, that's not, it didn't go bad. So I can't say that about all my wines, and I don't want, and we don't want anybody to think that. Most of my wines, like everybody's, they're good day 1, day 2, and then 3 through 7 depend on the wine's own history, the characteristics, and then did you vacuum it out? Did you pump it with argon or nitrogen? You know what I mean? So,
but not the Marabella.
No, all the signature blends pretty much. I'd say Celebrativo might be the least in that family, but you can. I tell people this. We've been saying this now I think we've been selling for 6 years. We've always tell people this: leave that much, because I know you think I'm crazy because that's not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
But I tell them, do that. If it isn't equal or better, then come back and I'll refund your money. And I've never had anybody come back for that. So,
but you can walk right up to the winery and buy a bottle.
Yeah, walk up. Now, having said that, because you specifically mentioned one type of event, but we have had farmer dinners. So we'll bring in a caterer, and we will pair our wines with. In fact, the 603 that you talked about earlier, when we first bottled it, it went south. Didn't taste like it did in the barrel. And it's a process called bottle shock. And so for about a month, we just hid it away. And then we had, I think it was an 8-course dinner, and we decided we were going to bring that out. But I can specifically remember 2 different people at this one dinner who had tasted that wine. We finally brought it to the tasting table, and they tasted it, and neither one of them bought it. I mean, if they had $15 in their pocket, it was number 2 on the list, so they weren't buying it. If they had $60 in their pocket, it was number 5.
Right.
And they both came to the dinner, and they were shocked at how that wine went with the dish that it was presented with. And they came to me. I know they.
I love that farmers' dinners, by the way. They came on the show.
What's really nice? Oh, Keith Saracen.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. He's done a lot for Nashua and the area farmers. And what's beautiful is the local farmer is producing. I mean, a lot. These farmers around here aren't dummies.
Yeah.
They've lasted and they are in business because they're hardworking, brilliant people. They're not manure shovelers.
Right.
And they do a lot for the community. And it's a great thing to see a guy come in, like I'll say at the winery, and it's his lettuce, and it's another guy's squash.
Yeah, that's
and
beautiful.
Another guy had, he raised pigs. And I just got to see what they're doing, and then I, plop down the wine. This is going to go with this, whatever. In fact, that Keith Saracen did a beautiful one here in Nashua, right, where they shut down Main Street.
Yeah, Main Street, yeah.
And we got to work with all the. In fact, our wines were presented as the sole wine winery, anyways. And what's nice at all of these events is you don't know who sometimes even the guests are. We've had people from Whole Foods be there, and then they come up to you at the end and they whip out their card and we'd like to have your wine in our store. But even better than that is the non-wine drinker who's there only because his wife likes wine or vice versa, and they come in and it's like they scratch their head and they're a beer drinker, a scotch drinker, or whatever, and they I didn't know.
Yeah.
I could like wine. And it's only because of one thing. We look at the wine, we look at it like water, we think it's a beverage. Yeah. It's not a beverage. It's a food and a tool.
Yeah.
And once you get that through your head,
it's a whole different
ball game. Yeah. It's like a spoon. You use a spoon for soup, you use a fork, you use a knife or whatever, and a certain wine is going to make a food,
Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show to talk about
Thank you.
Fulchinos.
Went by fast.
Yeah.
I hope I did okay for you.
Perfect. We have 30 seconds left. You have a website.
Yep, FulchinoVineyard.com, which I
Right.
think is on the screen.
And you're located here in Hollis and right off of...
We're on Pine Hill Road.
Hill Road.
We're on Pine Hill Road. We're set way back.
You're
Right
open
now,
year-round?
we're open year-round. Right now is weekends, and then we'll expand the hours through the year.
Oh, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
If you like wine, you got to visit Fulchino's. Until next week, thanks for watching Gate City Chronicles. Thank you for watching Gate City Chronicles, and we want to thank our sponsor, Avard, the Dean of Clean. You can reach them at 603-521-7657. If you need your carpets cleaned, call Avard.
preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.